Hello everyone, Mr. E here, and today, of course, we're doing a time-honored tradition on this channel, and one of the most important types of videos for both new players and experienced players alike, and that's, of course, the tier list. The melee tier list. A good bit has changed since we last did this back in October, I want to say, of 2025. We've, of course, had the Hive Scum introduced a couple new weapons, and we've had some tweaks to a few of the classes, and that has moved these weapons up and down. And of course, as time goes on, my own experience with these has changed as well. So as I said, this is really important, I think, for new players, because as we all know, if you're an experienced player of Darktide, there's a number of these weapons that are just garbage, and if you invest your time and resources in leveling them up and getting better with them, you'll eventually reach a point where you realize, oops, that was a terrible decision, and I don't want that to happen to anybody. The second sort of people that will benefit greatly from this are the sort of people that know better than me, and they're going to make fun of me, and they'll have lots of fun laughing at how wrong I am. But hey, this is just my opinion based on my own personal experience and play experience in the game, plus what I've seen other people do with a lot of these weapons, which is generally way more than I could do. But with that being said, what we're going to be doing here today is, of course, separating these weapons into the tiers here, and let me go ahead and explain the tiers as you see them. We're first going to start out with the best in-game tier. These are only going to be a select few weapons. These are the weapons that are the best mark of their class. They're the best on whatever class they're on, plus all the other classes it's available on. They just simply outperform all other options, and if you are making a build that can slot this weapon in, it's going to be the best option to slot it in. They typically have just way higher stats. They are jacks of all trades, and yeah, they're just super good. I'm certain that many of you, if you play the game at all, have a few of these in mind already, what might exist up here in this best in-game tier. Following that up though with the best in class tier, and these are the two tiers if you're trying to push and get into higher difficulties, if you're trying to see if you can climb to Havoc 40, these are the two tiers you should really be honed in on, because this is where all the quality stuff is, the stuff that is not going to slow down as the enemies ramp up the difficulty. The best in class is going to apply to at least one, if not two weapons on each class in this game, and these are going to be your best options, your best picks, as I said before. Just to have an all-round solid build, right? These are going to be good against all sorts of enemies, you know, whether it's armored or bosses. The thing I did away with from the last time we did this tier list is I had a separation last time around where I was talking about how these weapons aren't effective versus crushers and these ones are, but there are certain weapons in the game that do solid damage against crushers but just aren't very good overall, and so I wanted to kind of remove that distinction. I will make a specific mention if a weapon is effective against crushers and the carapace threat as it exists, but we can always just keep our fingers crossed that they also just remove carapace. Then we'll go into the competitive tier. This is when I'm saying these weapons are still viable. You will not be shooting yourself in the foot by selecting these weapons. They are just simply behind some of the other stuff, just by a little bit even at times, in terms of staying at that upper cutting edge of competitiveness. These weapons here are in the running, but they might have just a few slight flaws that's going to bring them behind those absolute peak weapons up here, and you will not be sort of hurt that much by choosing something in the competitive tier. If you are a player who has achieved the higher ranks of skill and you're getting bored with the stuff that's up here, if you play with this a bunch, these will be the weapons I recommend you move to next, because these weapons are still going to be really solid, give you a good amount of damage, you're going to be contributing, but they aren't just full-on meme mode like some of the stuff lower down in the tier would be if you were trying to play with that. Following this on is the tier. This is where things start to get a little, let's say, sketchy. These weapons, when I see people bring them into games, I'm like, I'd really rather you not. I don't actually say it, but that's what I'm thinking. And when you see players playing with weapons like this, it's generally for me one of two options. They're absolutely goated and they're about to play out of their fucking mind with this weapon, or they don't know that this is not actually that good a weapon and they're about to have a bad time. And yeah, you'll see when we talk about the weapons here, there's a good number of weapons that are in this category that I think are just missing some crucial element to be able to be really played effectively in the game, especially as the difficulties get higher and higher and the density of enemies gets heavier. Following that on is no, just the no tier. These are the ones that are just flatly like, nah, just don't bring this. It's not an exciting weapon. It's got worse stats than some other competitors. There's really no reason to be bringing this weapon, and there are better options out there. Enough said, right? And then finally, no. Just no. Do not bring this weapon. These are the worst in their mark, and their like weapon family is probably also already not that good. You'll never see anybody really bringing these weapons outside of the lowest difficulties in the game generally, so that is why most of these will not be upsetting anybody, the things I'm putting down here. These are the things that nobody is bringing as a fact already, generally. But with that being said, yeah, well, that's our whole ranking assortment. And as a reminder, of course, these are my personal experiences. I'll be kind of giving an evaluation based on Auric to Havoc. You know, I think that the game should be balanced around an Auric difficulty. That's my favorite difficulty to play at. But, you know, if you are trying to push those higher difficulties, obviously stuff up here is going to be better. And of course, obviously the best decision to make if you're trying to push from Auric and into Havoc, etc., is to subscribe to the channel. Help me push to Warhammer 40k subscribers. And yeah, like and comment down below. And tell me also in the comments if you think that I'm wrong about anything, and I'll just delete your comment. Okay, let's start here. Let's pick randomly here. Of course, since last time we have added in a couple here. We've got the Hive Scum weapons mixed in here, but I'm going to save those for last, since the Hive Scum has been saved for last as well. And let's start with some nice, juicy, normal weapons that a lot of classes have access to. Let's start with the Tac Axes, shall we? The Tac Axes are very solid weapons, incredibly high damage per second potential, really high crits. They have good blessings, very solid all-rounders, and as many of you have seen, I have been doing challenge runs on my stream, and the Tac Axe carried me for a number of levels. Now, the best one of these, in general, is the Tac Axe Mark 7. The reason the Tac Axe Mark 7 stands out above the rest is because the Tac Axe 7 has a higher base damage. One of the things that the Tac Axes don't have is very much raw damage, and that means that all the crits and stuff that they're doing, you know, they're getting like 3 or 4 attacks per second, but the individual hits don't hit that hard. And so this one kind of strikes that nice medium balance between those, because it has similarly high attack speeds, but these movesets are really simple, sweeping, and it has a heavier base damage, which can help to one-shot more targets. Now, this is my recommendation for like Arbites and Zealot and all those classes that could use this effectively, but on Hive Scum particularly, I recommend this one, the Mark IV, on Hive Scum only. Reason being, this weapon is going to fall behind this one on every other class, but this one right here, the Mark IV, I believe, has a uppercut and an overhead that have 30% innate rending on them, and the Hive Scum is kind of unique in the sense that he can make up for that low base damage by stealing all the enemy's damage with hyper violence and of course rampage. So this class can turbo boost the base damage of this weapon, so he doesn't have to worry about the low base, and then he can use that special rending attack to pop crushers and maulers, no problem. The only one that kind of lags behind here is our last mark. I'll put it in the competitive tier. Again, it's just going to be an Unga Bunga light attack weapon. It's just this one doesn't stand out in any way, shape, or form that makes it like exceptional. So yeah, just like left click through the level, easy peasy. These weapons are very solid in any class that can use them. You won't have a bad time. And yeah, good stuff. Let's, from there, since we're talking about Unga Bunga, let's talk about a weapon that has changed a bit since the last time around, and that is our Bully Club friend. We have the Mark IIIB Bully Club, which last time around was ranked as one of the GOAT weapons in the game. It was one of the best. Unfortunately, since then, the Ogryn has received a nerf, and the Ogryn hit 2 nerfs that are really sizable for this weapon. One is that the batter skill was nerfed. It went from being 2 stacks of bleed on light attack to a 1 stack of bleed on every light attack. The heavy attacks have maintained at 4 stacks, but this really hurt this weapon, because this weapon is the light attack king of the Ogryn class. It was just spamming light attack, staggering the fuck out of everything, and then putting, you know, 16 stacks of bleeds on them in no time at all. Add to that, they also nerfed heavy hitter and the impactful minor keystone within it, and that means that this weapon, which already had pretty solid stagger values, is now losing a good bit of stagger, and that just makes you a little bit less safe, right? More stagger is better, especially on Ogryn. So this weapon has gotten bumped down quite a bit. I don't think it's the best in class anymore. I think it is merely in that competitive tier. The fact that you kind of have to rely on heavy attacking to get any amount of bleeds on targets now, like any true damaging amount of bleeds, means there's just better options, right? Especially since you're going to want to start the engagement with a heavy attack, and this weapon is pretty limp at doing that. But fortunately, the Ogryn does have other options for this. Since we're talking about the one bully club, this is the best of the three. I'll give the tier to the second bully club, which is hiding somewhere here. There it is. This is the Mark 1. It gets the tier. You know, it's got strong single target damage, but it is a heavy overhead strike down. And that is not really something that you want with an impact weapon. I mean, you want it, I guess, but for an impact weapon, what's really good, or what was really good about the Mark III, is that you could just cleave everything in front of you, slapping it around, staggering the hell out of it, and then you would just stack bleeds on them and stagger them and stop them from hitting you. This weapon doesn't have those high impact values on its light attacks, and its heavy attack is a single target strike down, so how are you going to keep like 3 or 4 enemies off you at a time? It's not all that good for it. And if you're going to go for a heavy attack strike down, I can think of like 3 better weapons that do that on the Ogryn than this guy does. And then of course the worst one is this Mark II. That's just the no weapon. It's just like a 1-to-1 sort of stat equivalency with this Mark 1, but it's just a way worse moveset. It doesn't really have anything that it offers in terms of moveset, so avoid that at all costs. If you're still interested in going for this weapon, just play with the Mark III, but if you want a better version of this, I highly recommend its new replacement, which is, of course, the Power Maul, which is a best-in-class weapon. The Power Maul is the new bully club. Its light attacks are just bully club attacks. Its heavy attacks are bully club attacks. But it additionally, every 10 seconds, gets this absolutely immense empowered wallop. And this thing is super, super destructive. It is kind of perfect for everything Ogryn does, because Ogryn needs to stagger targets. This thing can not only instantly kill the target that it hits, but it staggers everything around them. And so you're just breaking up this horde. You'll send them sprawling. Like, it is a big blast. And you don't really realize till you're playing how fast 10 seconds is. Like, that's 6 times a minute that you're dumping this on enemies. Effectively, like, 100 or 200 times a game, you get to drop this attack that can instantly kill anything up to a crusher. Like, it could get close to killing a crusher in one shot. And one thing I really love about this weapon is that it covers up for a weakness that I've always felt really sucked for Ogryn, which is the Ogryn has really poor anti-mutant counters. The Ogryn's weapons that are heavy, like that hit for high single target damage that can get rid of mutants, are really slow, like the Brank's pickaxe. And so, like, when you had the bully club, you could get juggled a couple times by the mutant because those light attacks didn't kill it fast enough and you can't stagger it. So this weapon can just charge up and just instantly blat the mutant, no problem. Plus, like, its next door neighbors 2 doors down as well will also die. So yeah, the Paul has ascended. It also plays really, really well with the Skull Crusher Blessing. It plays really well with some talents that expand your blast radius. So you can go blast radius, and then you can do the fire radius, so it puts like fire stacks on targets too, which is pretty fun. Yeah, just a really good all-round weapon. Plays really well into what Ogryn does. I don't think it's the absolute best weapon on the Ogryn right now, but it is certainly the second best. And that should be really saying something, honestly. Like, they buffed this weapon, and then like it's suddenly the second best. That means there's not a whole lot of good options on the class, unfortunately. Let's go from the Ogryn and go back to more general stuff. Let's do just chain swords, I suppose. Chain swords are very much in this tier for me right now. The chain swords don't really differentiate each other too much. They are just inversions of their own attack patterns. The chain swords have this problem where their DPS potential isn't very high, and the way that you would get more damage out of them is by revving them and like latching them in. The problem being is that in Darktide, you sort of have to have low time to kill or high stagger. And these weapons don't have either of those, right? They don't kill Horde or elites or whatever any faster than any other weapon, and they do not stagger. They have really, really poor stagger values. So what's to stop those enemies from hitting you while you're doing that? And the answer is nothing. They're going to hit you back while you're doing it, especially all the enemies that are around them. So yeah, these weapons just kind of struggle, and they're available in like every class, and I can't think of a class that would use this better than any other alternative. So these weapons, they did get a buff against Carapace armor, because now if you let it rip all the way, the last rip of the chainsword will do some pretty good damage against Carapace. But think about the number of other weapons in the game right now, across all the classes that these are available on, that can just kill that Carapace target before you could do that. And as I'll talk about here in a second when I talk about the chain axes as well, I think the game's design is sort of navigating us away from selecting these chain weapons, because the commitment to like chaining and holding on a target and ripping them like that is just far too long on higher difficulties. The way the intensity of the game is picking up, it's just no space to do it. And yeah, these things are just very mid. They've got some decent blessings, but poor base stats that really holds them back. And I can think of like pretty much every other weapon on these classes is going to be a better option if you're going for that. We'll also talk about shovels. Should we do shovels? Let's do veteran shovels. I feel pretty similarly about the veteran shovels. First of all, though, I'm going to go ahead and give the veteran shovel Mark 1 the ranking here. It's okay, I guess, but the problem with the shovels, it's not in the blessings, and it's not in the moveset, it's in the base stats, yet again. These are like, you ever seen like an anime or something where like there's a swordsman and he's so talented he just fights with like a wooden training sword instead of fighting with an actual like katana or whatever? That's what it feels like to fight with a shovel. It feels like you're intentionally nerfing yourself because you're like, shit, I don't want to like flex an enemies too hard. I'll fight you with this dirty fucking latrine digger. And that is exactly what I feel like when I'm playing with these weapons. These other two, though, I'm going to put in no tier. The time investment required to like bend these things and get the hit and like actually cash out on the damage is too high. There's way better options, and since these are veteran-specific weapons, I can point to one specific better veteran option that is going to do way, way better. The only reason I'm ranking the Mark 1 higher is because this weapon is just unga bunga. Like, it just does... It's solid, I guess, at just swinging left and right. And the weapon special here is a little thing that like pokes the enemy's eye out and has a high stagger value. So it can be pretty decent at just kind of like holding your own. But again, you could do the same thing 10 times over with any other weapon on this class. Yeah, it's decent at best, but it just feels like a nerfed version of everything else. Speaking of the anything else, I suppose the weapon that I was talking about, that if you want to go for an empowered attack that actually does damage, it would be the power sword, sorry. The power sword has 2 marks for the veteran. One that I would say you should stay away from, this one, I think it's Mark 3 or whatever it's called, and the one that is absolutely peak, best in class, is the Mark 6. The difference here is literally down to moveset. The moveset on this one, the Mark 6, enables you to do a push stab attack. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch go watch a build guide video or something of mine where I'm doing the force sword, like a melee veteran or whatever. The push stab attack does a little thrust that is very sharp, and you aim it at the enemy's head and it does like a couple thousand damage. And then you follow that up with an overhead light attack in the same attack chain, and you will instantly kill anything up to a crusher. Crushers still almost die. I think they do if you have like focus target and stuff in there. Very devastating little weapon combo there. Pair that up with the fact that your light attack slashes are just left and right. You can just level a whole horde, easy peasy. This weapon is a little bit clunky because that is the empowering thing you got to do over and over. And of course, there is a blessing tax here. You pretty much have to take Power Cycler to use this weapon, but it is still really, really high at a baseline stat value. You're going to be able to annihilate anything. One-shot poking mutants and ragers and maulers is not at all bad. And the veteran is kind of a class that is uniquely outfitted to do well with this thing, because he can rely on his range weapon at times and then swap over to this when he needs to pick off like 1 or 2 targets and then go back. He doesn't have to worry about fighting with it 100% of the time. It is a pretty slow moving weapon, which is another downside. The other weapon, the other power sword, stay away from it. It just doesn't have a very good moveset. You'll be losing out on what makes this weapon able to perform and get kills at the highest level. So yeah, stay away from that one. Hit this Mark 6 one. We should also, from there, talk about one of my favorite weapons on the veteran class and on a couple classes. That's the Shock Maul. The Shock Maul is getting the best in class for me. This is the best in class on 2 classes, the veteran and on the Arbites. The Shock Maul, I need to expound on this for a little bit. The Shock Maul is always one of those weapons where I see people, why the hell are you using a Shock Maul? Isn't that weapon suck or something? It used to, but they got a lot of base stat buffs, and now this weapon is very unique in this game. This is actually one of my favorite weapons in the game in terms of its design. It is such a sleeper OP weapon. This weapon has, of course, the ability to shock prod enemies. When they are shocked, they are just completely CC'd. You can do whatever you want to them, and that is incredibly powerful because there's a ton of enemies in this game that are obnoxious to deal with, and you can't stop them from doing their thing. Bulwarks, Ragers, Crushers, right? They're coming up to drop an overhead on you. This weapon can shut all of that down guaranteed. You just shock them, and now you can follow-up attack on them. The difference between these 2 Mauls, by the way, is that this one here starts with a sweep like this from right to left, and so you can like hit multiple small enemies, and then the light attack sweeps back this way, and so you go heavy attack, light attack, heavy attack, light attack. Just sweeping back and forth. But the shock attack, if you do the special weapon special and then follow up with a heavy, is just heavy overhead strike downs on the crown of their head over and over. And the strike downs on these weapons have 90% rending. So you're going to have an amazing damage efficacy into Crushers, etc. No problem. You can knock out a Crusher in 3 hits with this thing. And this weapon, as I said, negates the threat of all those enemies that would otherwise be just kind of in your space, like bulwarks, etc. If you've ever had one of those moments where you have that situation where like all the enemy horde just explodes out of a door, you're like, how the fuck? Oh my god, it's overrunning us, and it's trying to get past you to get someone behind you, and you know if it does, you're going to get surrounded. All you got to do is start shocking all their leading units, like shock their bulwark, shock their Crusher, and as soon as you get that taser on them, they're immobilized for like 3 or 4 seconds. You get the space, you get the hell out of there. This weapon, the real selling point here is it has Skull Crusher on it. And Skull Crusher is the best blessing in the game. If it's on a weapon, chances are it's goated. And it buffs it up a lot, especially if it has a high stagger value. And this weapon does have stagger value. So when you have this weapon, you can boost the damage that enemies take, which multiplies your entire team's damage to any target by 40, 80, and I think you can even get to 120 if you can keep them staggered for long enough, because it stacks the more you hit them. So yeah, this weapon can increase the enemy damage enemies take, which applies to bosses, and it of course melts the shit out of Captain Shields. This is really, really good with the veteran, because the veteran, again, can be relying on his ranged weapon most of the time and pull this out to deal with bosses and captains. You'll notice the difference when you have one of these on your team, because captains will die instantly. Their shields will get burst over and over and over. The Arbites is the other really effective user of this weapon, because of course that Skull Crusher blessing can be applied when he gets headshots, not when the enemy is staggered, but instead just on headshots. So all you gotta do is headshot an enemy a couple times and they start taking immense damage, and it goes toe to toe with the Mark III Arbites Shock Maul, which is really saying something. So yeah, definitely try out the Shock Maul. It's a weapon that a lot of people sleep on because it looks so clunky and stupid, but trust me, it is not weak, not in the slightest. We'll go from there and do Eviscerators next. Eviscerators, I would say, are in that competitive tier. The Eviscerator gets the benefit of being on the Zealot class. Solid damage here. The thing about the Eviscerator is that it is very slow. Fortunately, the Zealot got a nice buff to the Martyrdom talent, which kind of helps to make up for that. It boosts all of the animation speeds of revving and all that stuff for this thing. It enables it to just kind of compete in the way it couldn't before, because it is just too slow a swinging weapon. Of course, it's going to make you slow as molasses to move around with, but you can use your range weapon to do that. And this weapon has very solid and respectable boss damage in both the monstrosity bosses and captains. So you won't hurt bringing one of these to the team. I think there are better options in the heavy sword sort of category, you know, the Relic Blade being the one I'm referring to here. But of course, you know, they're fine, right? They're doing just fine. I don't think I would need to see these buffed in any way, shape, or form. I think they're doing just fine for what they are. They're just a little bit clunky to play with, right? They're definitely the best chain weapons in the game currently, and so that's good for them. You can like 1 or 2 piece of boss with these. Good stuff, yeah. Heavy Eviscerator Zealot is doing just okay right now. No issues there. You won't see it a whole lot because there's better options, but it's still good. Let's do our first of a couple of Hive Scum weapons here, though. Let's talk first about the Bone Saw. The Bone Saw, since we're talking about a saw-based weapon, the Bone Saw, I would say, is one of the best-in-class weapons on the Hive Scum. The Bone Saw is a super versatile weapon, and it happens to be able to be played with both ranged and melee builds. The fact that this weapon can innately apply Toxin is incredibly valuable for the Hive Scum, because the Hive Scum can get a bunch of benefits out of having enemies coated with this Toxin. Both the purple and the green trigger all of the talents that are associated with this sort of stuff, and this weapon has a strong enough base stat line that you can use it even if you aren't spec'd into specifically like a melee build. So you'll see on all my range builds, I use this weapon as well because it has enough damage and stagger that you can like hold off a rager or something like that. You can chunk them. And the purple Toxin here that you can coat the blade with can increase the damage that bosses and stuff take. Just a good all-around weapon. Nice high base stamina value of like 4.5 or something, so you'll have plenty to block and shove with, etc. Damage over time effects are good and helpful, and this thing doesn't have a whole lot of problem with various types of armor or anything either, so it ends up being a good all-rounder weapon. Very solid. I'll say it several other times throughout the video, I'm sure, but most of the new-ish weapons, the weapons that have been released since like a year ago or so, are pretty much peak. Like almost all the new DLC weapons and stuff are very peak. They're doing incredibly well in the game. Yeah, very, very good stuff. Yeah, especially the chem on hit, the green chem on hit is really good. You can start out a boss engagement by sniping with the Toc pistol a couple times and then just stay on them and keep hitting them once every like couple of seconds, and this will keep 30 stacks of Toxin on them. It'll melt like any target. Just very effective in that sense. Let's go and talk about our pickaxes. I keep adjusting the screen. I don't need to do that. Adjusting the screen is probably messing up the recording. Okay, pickaxes here. We have 3 to choose from. Where's my Barovian? There it is. Okay, so there are 3 pickaxes. There's the Branks, this is the Carcelis, and there's the Barovian. The problem here is that these weapons they don't do stagger, right? And the number of enemies that are in the game right now kind of necessitate that on higher difficulties, as you proceed, you need to stagger enemies. You need to keep them from hitting you. And none of these weapons particularly do that very well. The 2 that are the best here, the ones that are competitive are the Branks and the Carcelis. The Branks is probably the one that is the most standout here because it does something that really no other Ogryn weapon, well, maybe one other Ogryn weapon can do, which is it can single target destroy one dude, right? You can pick out one guy and go, you're dead. The problem with it is it takes forever to do that effectively, and the horde clear on the back end of this thing, it kind of reminds me of Thunderhammer, where you are using push stabs and stuff in order to clear hordes because it's got such a wonky ass moveset. So yeah, this thing has a weird moveset, but it does hit hard on that single hit. That's sort of the foil with the Carcelis, which has an Unga Bunga light click spam sort of moveset. Does sacrifice that heavy attack potential though. The reason that I rank these only competitive and not like best in class or anything is because, again, the value and the amount of damage and stuff that you're going to provide with these is, I don't think that the damage of the Branks is going to outweigh what you could be doing with other weapons in the class. So, like, think about this, right? How often are you really using the strike down on the Branks and getting a single target hit on like some armored target? Not all that often, excepting a couple of combats. If you could, though, if you traded it off and wanted to go for a weapon that only every 10 seconds could eviscerate one heavily armored target, well, then you could just play with Power Maul. play Power Maul, and then every 10 seconds you blow up one guy and everything around it goes cascading to the ground, and then the rest of the time you can also be staggering stuff and knocking it back and keeping it from ever hitting you, and you get a better moveset outside of that. The Carcelis finds itself in a weird spot right now where it's the best like Unga Bunga spammer for like direct damage. These guys, by the way, they have good direct damage, good damage numbers on there, but good damage numbers on Ogryn isn't much, because like good damage on like a weapon like the Power Sword is great. The mobility sucks in this weapon, etc. But the class can dodge attacks. It doesn't need to like stagger. It can just like kill stuff and avoid. This class has to kill stuff and stop the enemies from attacking them, because you're not going to be able to dodge everything perfectly with this class. So yeah, the Carcelis is kind of like, it's still competing because it's got a high enough DPS value, but it doesn't have anything that's really special like the Branks does, being able to instantly delete something. The Barovian is in the tier for the same reason here. It loses out on the ease of use, and it loses out on that single target blat potential, so I'm going to put it one tier down in the category. And pivoting from there, since we're talking about the pickaxes, let's talk about other axes, the combat axes. We have 3 to choose from here as well. We've got the Antax, we've got the Rashad, and we've got the Aklis, which is hanging out somewhere here. So the king of these 3 is the Rashad, which will be in the competitive tier. It has the first target, it has the finesse and the penetration blessings, or what are they called, the stats on it. So this thing has really high potential for like headshot critical multiplier damage. Like you can just absolutely blow up a single target just by chopping them over and over. The trade-off for that is that this weapon has really kind of limp like existence outside of those heavy chops, and again I can think of other weapons that could heavy attack to the head and deal a similar amount of damage and then have a better experience overall. Also, all these combat axes have exactly 0 like movement speed associated with them, so you don't get to movement tech or like zip around the arena, and that really sucks because you can definitely do that with some of the other assassin like single target type weapons. The ones that are falling behind here are definitely the Antax, which is going to go in the tier. The Antax historically was one of the best weapons in the game, if not the best weapon in the game when it launched. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but this weapon plus brutal momentum plus whatever else it was, this thing was so strong because its light attacks are like over 200 damage, and so you would just light attack everything to death. It wouldn't even have a chance. And there weren't that many enemies in the game at the time that could actually stand up to this. Like Maulers, you just chop in the body 3 times. You'd encounter occasional crushers and stuff, but you could take those out with other utilities. Then we entered the era of like Havoc and stuff like that, and the crusher problem, the population of enemies that the Antax doesn't kill outright in like 1 or 2 chops went up, and then that just cratered the Antax usage. Because it cannot kill a fucking crusher, dude. You're going to be all there all day. Oh, also this thing's boss damage is garbage. It's terrible. I used to play Antax Zealot, and like I would just be chopping on a boss all day for like 3% of their HP. Pitiful stuff. So yeah, it's one use. It's really good at like low level games. So if you're a person who never plays outside of Malice, play the Antax, baby. Easy peasy. Left click, just light attack spam the entire time. Because if it doesn't kill something, it'll stagger it. And you'll see that it's actually quite good at low-level games, because if bots get it equipped, they can actually survive against hordes way longer than bots that don't have this weapon. So that's what it's good for. But the weapon that's not good here is the Aklis. I take a fat dump on this thing every time I make a tier list. It's like a weapon that has no good moves. Its light attacks are weird and slow and too vertical, so you're going to hit like 1 enemy at tops. Its heavy attack is supposed to be a single target killing attack, but it's a sweep. So if you like accidentally hit an enemy in the way, and it's just not good. It just sucks. I've never seen a player actually use this in a game. Fun fact. So I'm gonna put it in the no tier because I know no one's gonna defend this fucking thing. It sucks, and I just don't think this weapon even needs to exist. Like you've got both avenues covered here, right? You've got your heavy attack, you've got your light attack. What do you need this for? Okay, we now should talk about the Ogryn Shovels, maybe? We're almost done. Kind of halfway there. Ogryn Shovels are in a peculiar spot. I like them for the most part. I'm going to rank this one a no tier, though. This one lost its one gimmick, which was that the uppercut punch on it had enough stagger with the heavy hitter keystone with the impactful like addition that you could stagger like demon hosts and bosses and stuff with it. That is no longer the case, and this one mark here loses out on the main benefit of the shovel, which is that you can fold the blade and do like a one big blam attack with it. The other two marks are doing okay. Mark 5, I'll give it the Mark 19, I'm going to give it competitive tier. The Mark 5, just a little bit behind the Mark 19 instead of in cases of like move set and stuff. The Mark 19 is just got a really, really solid like base move set, and then of course that bending the shovel blade and hitting the target will just instantly kill just about anything. So it's good for that. The problem with these weapons, and the pickaxes for that matter, is yes, you can like cleave a horde or whatever, and you can single target something, but like this sort of weapon type would be really good on another more evasive class, but it's not good here. It's like you need to be staggering these enemies when you do it. It's cool that you can kill a single target, but you know what else kills a single target? The power maul, or just staggering them and beating them to death while they're on the ground. So yeah, this guy right here, he's good, like he has good numbers. You'll put out good numbers playing Shovel Ogryn, but you won't be competitive in the way you need to be with Ogryn right now, which is staggering the fuck out of everything and making sure that it can't hit you back at all. You need to be way too skilled in order to play with this thing effectively and dodge the damage incoming. And yeah, that's how I feel about shovels. Overall, about shovels, the thing I really want for these shovels, for the veteran shovels, I forgot to say it earlier, I really wish these were on the Hive Scum. Like, that would be so good on Hive Scum, because Hive Scum's hyper-violence and rampage, like, they kind of make up for that low base damage. So you could actually like get some very viable uses out of the shovel there, and it would make sense for Hive Scum, but unfortunately they are veteran exclusive, so we won't be seeing that change anytime soon. And let's talk Thunderhammers, since we're talking about exclusives. The Thunderhammers are in a bad spot. I have been down on them last time as well. I'll continue to do that because Thunderhammer is falling more and more out of relevance. Every time I see a Thunderhammer Zealot, I'm like, dude, can we just not today? So like Thunderhammer, the Crucis Thunderhammer is the better of the two. The Crucis Thunderhammer is the one you'll want to use if you're going for the Zealot bonk build and you want to kill a boss instantly. Whoop-de-doo. There's that for you. But the existence outside of that is literally tortured. Like, playing Thunderhammer Zealot when there's no bosses to kill is just, like, so sucky. It feels so bad. So I can't recommend using this, especially not when you could play Relic Blade and get very similar results to killing bosses, and then you'd be useful outside of this sort of stuff. And then the other one, the Iron Helm, is just a no tier because this one is the only one that's good at killing bosses, or has the best boss killing potential, and this one doesn't really have anything to show for it outside of that. So there you go. And speaking of hammers, let's do the Crusher, which is also tier. This weapon right here, it's kind of the inverse here. Activating this weapon does nothing. Like, this weapon's activation is pointless. I don't understand how the Ogryn Power Maul gets to have his weapon activation that's like a mini nuke, and then the Crusher's weapon activation can barely knock open a Bulwark shield. This weapon is only good when you have full stacks of Skull Crusher on the enemy and full stacks of Slaughterer on you, which fortunately it's like one of the best blessinged weapons in the game, but its base stats in terms of attack power and in terms of attack speed are so low. It's miserable to play with. If you're playing with a weapon, it's like you're challenging yourself an extra level, and you can get some good like stuff out of it, but like you are not gonna be competing with anything up here. It just doesn't have the attack speed or the damage throughput. Yeah, I really want to buff for the Crusher, like, very badly. And I also want that, like, empowered mode to do way more. That's just my opinion anyway. Let's also turn down... Or I can skip this song because it's too loud. What's next? What about the Blaze Swords, the Force Swords? We've got 3 here. We've got the... Elisi, the Demos, and the Obscurus. There they are. Okay, so the Blaze Swords. obviously the Demos is one of the best weapons in class. Here, Demos gets Uncanny Strike, it gets Deflector, it gets like Shred. There's all sorts of crazy good blessings on these swords. They are seriously blessed, pun intended, in the terms of blessings, right? They have so much good stuff here, and that's what's really important for the Psyker, is because the Psyker is not a typical melee class. You are not going to be using these swords as your mainline melee DPS, but having this in your melee slot can be incredibly powerful because you can block all attacks. You can block range attacks and melee attacks with Deflector, or you can use Slaughterer and increase your base strength, which will apply to all damage over time effects or whatever else you're doing, which is crazy good. The other two, I'm going to put them in competitive tier. Again, just because blessings, right? The competitive tier is like, you won't go wrong by having these equipped. And if you're playing a Psyker, chances are you're not really relying on these melee weapons. You wouldn't be hurt by using one of these in your build. It'll still have the good blessings you want. It'll have the solid damage to erase hordes. This one just gets that higher potential because the weapon special is that strike down that can actually like blat a single target for a very high amount of damage. And outside of that, just solid blessings all around that carries them. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got some absolute garbage, the Ogryn Cleavers. These weapons ate shit hard when the Ogryn got nerfed. The only reason these were useful was because the fast attack speed of the Cleavers was allowing you to stack bleeds really quickly. And so players were using it plus cleave, and they were like cleaving up hordes and stuff. And then this one right here, you could like, yeah, it's the stabby one. I think it's called the Mark IV. This one just like stabs enemies over and over, and then you can alternate that and punching, so you could like stagger bosses. But both the stagger thing and the bleed stacking both got nerfed. And these weapons, they don't cleave enemies. They deal 0 damage to armor. And this one has no cleave at all, even though it has better single target. But all of their damage potential, even at the time that these were like used in people's builds, after the when was these weapons like buffed a little bit? It was in like spring. I think I was seeing it mostly around the Arbites launch, so like June of 2025. Even at that time, players who knew were just using this weapon instead. We're just using Bully Club because the attack speed is as fast as these is, and it staggers more. So this was just a better option even at the time. And now these are made even further useless because their heavy attacks are garbage and slow. If you're going for heavy attacks that are, you know, slow like that, there's so many other better weapons on the Ogryn, and they have no stagger potential, and they have no armor clear potential. They have no horde clear potential. Yeah, like every other weapon on the Ogryn class is better than these, and so yeah, they have to be the hardest possible. No, this one only just barely surviving because its DPS potential is a little bit higher. Other weapons that I'm going to take a shit on real quick. Let's shit on heavy swords. I'm going to put heavy swords in the light no category. You know, there are some that are a little better than others. The Mark 6, I think, and the Mark 7, I think these are those two, in my opinion, are better than the Mark 9. The Mark 9 has lower base damage values with a easier to use moveset, but these have a nice arcing sweep. The problem here is that these weapons have no armor killing potential. Talking single digit damage to carapace armor. So the first crusher you come against, you better be playing Zealot with this weapon, because if you are not, you have no way to rend and actually kill that crusher you're going to have to run for your team. Outside of that, these weapons don't have anything special. They're literally just a hunk of metal, and they don't give you any like move speed advantage or anything like that compared to, and I made a video talking about this earlier in the year, compare that to your Dueling Sword, right? It's still just a hunk of metal that swings back and forth, really basic moveset. However, these weapons can boost your crit chance like crazy. These weapons can make you super fast to move with. They can give you all sorts of beneficial effects, including rending armor, of course. These weapons are just like, if armor didn't exist, they still wouldn't be very good. Right? They still would not be very good. They need something to differentiate them. Right now, it feels like these are like the weapons that they started with in the game, and then they just made all other weapons from there. They're the most bland possible thing with no particular selling point. So I could understand using them for like a challenge run or something else, but like if you're going to use a bland weapon with sort of low to middling damage that struggles against armor, you should just use the Devil's Claw instead, because the Devil's Claw does that, plus it has the parry effect, which is actually pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and with these two here, I'm going to go ahead and put these two into the no tier. Just don't use these two. Bad movesets is what's holding these back. But our Devil's Claw Mark 1, I'm going to put it in the competitive tier. Very good moveset. Clears Horde just fine. And of course, the parry. The parry is what this weapon is all about, right? That's the only reason you really carry it. The best users of this weapon are the Zealot and the Hive Scum. The Zealot, of course, gets rending on his attacks, and so he can, or on his charge attack, so he can actually use this to, and still be able to kill crushers and stuff like that. Absolutely dunk on bosses, no problem. The real winner with this weapon, try it on Hive Scum, no joke. Hive Scum, blocking with this weapon with hyper violence can like two-piece a demon host. It's disgusting. And rampage and all that stuff, it adds the damage of the retaliation attack. Plus, hyper violence makes up for, like I said earlier, it makes up for the fact that the low base damage on this weapon is what normally like kind of doesn't allow it to do anything. So you can just cleave through hordes, no problem here. Hyper violence and hyper lethality, or hyper critical, I mean, will just cull most stuff, no problem. And then you can just save your parries for bosses and take them apart in like 3 or 4 seconds. So yeah, this is a pretty cool weapon. If only there was a way to deal with armor on it. And I think that's where both the Zealot and the Hive Scum make do with it, is because the Hive Scum can just use a needle pistol and kill a crusher instead and doesn't have to worry about it. But everybody else, it's a good weapon for blocking. Of course, remember that the block time, or the parry on this weapon, is 100%. If you just keep spamming parry, there's no open window where you can get hit. So it is super, super safe against bosses and demon hosts and whatnot. All right. Weapon that is not super safe. Chain Axe. Chain Axe. I'll give the Mark 12 Chain Axe an eh tier, and I'm going to give the other one the no tier. The Mark 12 has the slightly better moveset, but here's what the problem with the Chain Axe is. The Chain Axe is the parry, by the way, it does have okay carapace damage. The problem is like, okay, you have to like look and wait for a crusher to do one of the attacks that doesn't instantly kill you, right? You have to not be taking the overhead. You have to take the side swipe or the kick or something like that and then parry that. And still, you'll probably end up having to hit him like 2 or 3 times. But yeah, it's not bad, right? It's not the worst in the game. It's no heavy sword. So this axe here, the Mark 12 Chain Axe, has okay movesets. The problem with these weapons is they have shifted so much power away from the like basic moveset into, oh, when you latch the chainsaw into something, it does this big and then it does a bunch of damage at the end. That worked in an early phase of the game, like back in the early eras of Darktide, when there just wasn't that much going on, and you had like, 1 or 2 crushers standing stoically in the middle of the field, mean mugging, and you would go up to them and attack them as a unit. That worked back then. But now, when you get attacked by crushers, they're accompanied by 3 other crushers and like 5 whatever random other enemies. You don't have the space or the time to do the sawing animation that this thing requires. So finding the opening to actually use the saw effect of these weapons is just too difficult for most players. So they need to be made less clunky in order to be effective. And the problem with that is that as you make them less clunky, you start to encroach on other weapons that are like, these weapons are designed to be clunky and slow and have big payoffs. Unfortunately, as you'll see in Darktide, weapons that are clunky and slow seldom have enough payoff to outcompete the weapons that are super fast and can get the work done very quickly. So, we could have a weapon that does like this, that can, one-shot a crusher with a charged, heavy attack, charged chain axe hit, but you could also just stab him 2 or 3 times in the head with the dueling sword in like 75% of that time, and you'd be able to be super mobile and defensive while you're doing it. So yeah, there's big trade-offs to consider there. Yeah, and this one just has a better moveset. Okay, let's start to put some stuff into these upper tiers again. I want to put a best in game up here. Let's, of course, just start out nice and easy and simple with the Dueling Sword Mark IV. This is the Mark IV, right, with the red handle. And we'll go ahead and assign these other 2 to best in class. The Dueling Swords are just good weapons, man. I can't, there's no 2 bones about it. The Dueling Swords have incredibly competitive damage. They have really good movesets, super fast move speed, good dodge distance. They have a parry now instead of the bonus thrust. They have solid blessings, such as the ability to stack crit on you and the ability to boost your finesse damage, the ability to get uncanny strike, of course, and they are just all-around beasts. The nerf to them did not hurt them very much at all. The Mark IV still holds the title as being the best of the four. But yeah, even the quote-unquote bad Dueling Sword, the Mark V, it still has pretty dang competitive damages, and it has absurd dodge distances and move speeds. So you can just like fling yourself all across the map with this thing. Yeah, they're just very highly statted weapons. And this is what I was talking about. I was like, these weapons are just pieces of metal that are very highly statted and have high critical hit ratios and stuff like that. This is the sort of weapon that excels in Darktide because it's fast and it can get the damage done in the blink of an eye. These sort of weapons like the chain axes and stuff really are going to struggle with the tempo of the game, and these weapons keep up with that tempo and exceed it. And now that you can parry with it, you can like solo fucking Millennia with easy peasy, no problem, right? Just the twin comes at you and you just parry her off and just destroy her. Yeah, good, solid weapon. You're not going to hurt for bringing any of the marks, but definitely the Mark IV still remains the best. And also up in the upper echelons, Arbites stuff, Arbites Shields, the shield, the stun baton, and the riot shield. Best in class, absolutely. These weapons are just absolute unga bunga terrors. This weapon takes Arbites, which is like a already nigh unkillable monster. He regenerates so much toughness per second. He is not able to be hurt by next to anything, and you add an extra layer of defense. So now he can't even get hurt by ranged attacks, because you can just block him. Now, if the horde gets overwhelming and you don't have enough stagger for him, just flashbang them all. Now they can't do anything for a second and a half, right? This stuff, like these two utilities, just being able to block ranged attacks and stagger enemies out of their animations, are so big, and you get that on top of this weapon having some very solid damage throughput. Like, it doesn't have big wallop hits like some of the other weapons do, but its DPS is very competitive. You can just unga bunga light attack most stuff down. You can swap to some heavy attacks if you got a crusher or something like that. But yeah, the real potential here is just overwhelming enemies with staggering blows and then dropping them to the ground and pummeling them to death while they're down there. And you're going to be pretty much untouchable while you do it. Add to that the fact you can block and parry just about anything, and that synergizes really well with the Arbites. It just takes him and makes him like an unstoppable sort of force. However, I will say that this weapon is outdone, of course, by the Mark III Shock Maul, because the DPS potential is higher here, and this one has better single target crushing, like, single attacks, right? You can get rid of a single crusher or something like that way easier with this weapon. The problem we have with this guy is that you will sort of blow your initial load, like pummeling them a couple times, and then they'll get their poise back and they'll go to attack you again. This weapon, they're never recovering. You hit them one time, they're staggered. You hit them a second time, now you can stun them with the electric prod attack, which is like 1,000 damage, and then they're dead on the third attack. Because this weapon here is supremely overstated for the game, which is kind of why it makes it a best in game tier. This weapon is doing like 300 light damage on a light attack, and it has this crazy attack speed, right? This absurd attack speed. A weapon that has this sort of attack speed has no business having the stagger and damage potentials that this thing does. So yeah, I don't know how they were statting this, but this is just an unga bunga weapon. You can light attack the entire game and cleave through like 90% of it. You've also got confident strike in this thing. Nuts. So good stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and do Hive Scum. Oh no, we do Ogryn, since we did the shield. Ogryn's best weapon now. It's the shield. It's the Battle Maul and Slab Shield. The Slab Shield is Ogryn's best weapon. It's one of the best weapons in the game. It is the highest staggering weapon in the game. It has a base stagger of like 60, 65 stagger or something like that. Heavy attack spamming with this thing is a learned skill. just like it was in on Ironbreaker, Barden, and Vermintide. Just keep smashing them in the bridge of the nose at the edge of the shield, right? And enemies just can't get up. Add to that, of course, Skull Crusher. So once the enemies are staggered, they stay staggered, they take a bunch of extra damage. This weapon, since bleed stacks are now stacking to 4 stacks on every heavy attack, like it used to, this is just the new recrowned king of Ogryn, and it really plays into everything that Ogryn is good at. The enemies approach you because you got them taunted, and then you lay them the fuck out. And this will lay just about everything out. It has poor damage into bosses and stuff, but remember, your job is to crowd control. It's to make things soften up and take more damage. For anything that's non-boss, this thing is just laying it out on the floor, and it's going to bleed to death before it gets back up, because the damage that it's going to take is like so crazy high. And this weapon, of course, is super defensive. The shoves are massive, especially if you get that extra 250% shove power node that's somewhere in the tree in the middle. That thing can just like shove a whole army down, and you can block range shots. My recommendation, though, if you play with this, please don't be that Ogryn who just like shield walls and goes on the defensive and never moves. You need to stay on the aggressive with this weapon. This is an aggressive weapon, so just keep that in mind. And other aggressive weapons, we've got the Crowbar. Crowbar is in the competitive tier. The Crowbar is the weakest of the Hive Scum weapons right now. The Crowbar, a lot of its power relies on having the blessings active. It's got a good amount of power, like 37% power that you can get from killing elites. It gets more power from like doing pushes and stuff like that. And of course, it scales very well because you're Hive Scum, and Hive Scum can get a bunch of extra power from killing and from using Rampage and stuff like that. So it works on him, but even so, the weapon is clearly lagging behind its competitors. I think it's in a good spot, honestly, like personally, as the power level of the game is. But it's very clear. You can feel the difference, right? If you play a build that is not focused around melee and you bring the bone saw, you can still kill stuff. If you bring the crowbar, you're like, uh-oh, I can't kill anything. It doesn't have enough stagger on the blunt side, and the crowbar side doesn't do enough direct damage to kill anything fast enough, versus the like this one, which just seems to like cut stuff down in 1 or 2 hits. So I would like the base stats of the thing to be a little bit higher. You know, this weapon is good, but I find it hard to justify using it over anything else. It's funny though, and it's the best staggering weapon that the class has, I suppose. So there's that. And we should also talk about knife while we're on the case. The combat knives, best in class for the Mark III here, best in game for the Mark VI. It's the better of the 2 marks because the heavy attack sweep on your heavy attack 1 is just really, really good. And then of course you got that push stab attack that jabs out like that. Super fast weapon, uncanny strike, riposte, all sorts of enabling for adding bleeds to enemies, getting 8 stacks of bleed on crit or 4 stacks on that on your like body shot. Both of those are really, really powerful, synergize a ton of stuff. And of course, this weapon is crazy fast, right? You are untouchable with knife. It's a silly, silly weapon. You're running around enemies, you're poking them, you're bleeding them out, and yeah, like this is where I'm saying like speed is kind of king here. Like if the enemies can't catch you, what are they going to do to you? And this thing makes you so fast. It is the fastest moving weapon in the game. You know, just over flat land. If there's jumps and stuff involved, we have another one to talk about. But yeah, this weapon is pretty goated, kind of always has been, and it synergizes super well with crits. It produces its own bleeds, which are really powerful. Being able to like put dots on stuff for free is kind of OP. So yeah, use knife, guys, especially if you're like a core zealot or something. Definitely use some knives. Speaking of zealots, Relic Blade. Relic Blade is a best-in-class weapon. Relic Blade, that's not a Relic Blade. That's the other Relic Blade. The Relic Blade is a just absolute powerhouse. This thing is right in the sweet spot of what I want balance to be in Darktide. I think that the Relic Blade is such a well-designed weapon. It has a upside, which is that it has strong, diverse attacks. It can deal with a variety of enemies. It's got like strike downs, it's got lunges, it's got single targets, it's got multi-target. It has parries. It also has a downside of being relatively slow to move with. And a skilled player with the Relic Blade can perform some absolutely tremendous feats. You can see a skilled player playing with the Relic Blade, right? But it isn't overpowered in doing so. They still have to endeavor to put the work in. But you can just blat bosses. If you haven't seen the AA's Fat Mangus build, that is going to make Thunderhammer Zealots extinct, right? You can blat captains instantly on Havoc 40. So what's the purpose of a Thunderhammer anymore if you've got a Relic Blade that can do that, and the Relic Blade can perform and do the, like, you don't like the Mark 10? Okay, well, either way, like, the weapon is so well statted, and it just does such solid damage potential. That we can't, I can't put it anything less than best in class, right? It's got to be like just an absolute powerhouse of a weapon. So I think it's really, really good. It is not overpowered though. I want to drive that home. Like, this weapon isn't OP. It's just really, really P, if that makes any sense. Let me change my music. Okay, so compare that to how I said the Relic Blade is, like, it's strong, but it's not like OP strong. It's a far cry from the Force Greatsword, which the Force Greatsword, this is the one. I can't tell by the tiny little images, but I'm pretty certain, like, both these weapons are competitive in terms of like their damage output, but I think this is the one that I use because there's that little gold thing on there. This weapon, both these weapons have absurd damage potential. The Force Greatsword, for whatever reason, especially this one, which starts with a strike down and then goes into lunge, this weapon has some of the highest, like, crit ratios, has blessings that boost the crit, has blessings that boost your base power, has just stupid cleave, stupid base damage, makes you move fast with this weapon for some reason, because I guess the Psyker doesn't need to actually use strength to hold it. He's just like floating along. Yeah, these weapons are so comically, like, overstated in comparison to the Relic Blade. Like, you see someone fighting with the Relic Blade and they look like they're actually fighting. This weapon is just like, you go up the horde and you're just like, and then you just throw out the slash. Oh, I forgot to screenshot the power falchion. I'll grab it. Thank you. And so like, yeah, the slash is kind of like where we go from, like, this weapon is kind of bonkers in stat wise, you're just absurd. This weapon would already be good if we didn't have that slash to contend with. But then we get a weapon here that has, like, just a magic ability to erase an entire horde, and it's not a low damage ability either. It's like enough to kill up to gunners. I think you might be able to one-shot rages with it if it happens to crit. So yeah, really, really crazy stuff here. And we'll go ahead and add in, thank you, helpful Chatterino. We'll add in our Falchions here. But it shouldn't be too surprising to people. Falchions are in this tier. Let's go ahead and put them up here. I just don't think, I don't know, maybe they're a little more competitive. I just don't think that the Falchion does anything particularly, like, strong in the game right now. The Falchion is supposed to be a Relic Blade for the veteran, right? But what does the Falchion do that is different than just running, I don't know, like Tac Axe or like knife or whatever else you could run on the veteran, or Dueling Sword, right? What's the selling point on the Falchion? The selling point on the Falchion is supposed to be that you don't have to activate it like the Power Sword is. But the Power Sword's whole thing with activating it is that you can, like, one-shot anything with that, especially on the Mark 6, right? This gets middling damage against everything when it's activated, and when it's not, it does even less middling damage, and it makes you slow, which is supposed to be one of the downsides, the offsets for the power that you're carrying around here. So yeah, these make you too slow, they're too clunky to play with. You know, compare that to the Relic Blades. I know some certain people hate the Mark 10, but the Relic Blades have good oomph, right? They can do something unique that other weapons on the class really can't. Power Falchions aren't that. They're just kind of like glorified heavy swords. And we'll finish off here with our Shivs. I gotta give both Shivs somewhere best in class, right? But this one is the one that stands out. The Mark 1 or whatever this is called. The OG Shiv. This thing is disgusting. So when the game, when this launched, or when the Shivs came out with the Hive Scum, as a Hive Scum only weapon, when I first laid eyes on it, I looked at the blessings page, and the blessings, Uncanny Strike and Finesse or whatever, the one that gives you extra finesse when you dodge, are both omega nerfed on this weapon. Like, they have 40% of their regular efficacy. And I was like, oh shit, they're trying this out as like a way to like nerf, to like nerf those across the board. Yeah, I guess it's competitive. I'll give them competitive. You could Unga Bunga through a level with the other ones. That's true. They have high enough stats that you could like Unga Bunga, but this is the meat and potatoes. Learn this one. Okay, even lower, right? Just don't use this other one. Here you go. There you go. Just don't use it. What's the point? They're the same weapon, but this one has the moves you want. The reason I realized that the Uncanny Strike and stuff are nerfed on this weapon is not because they're trying to nerf it across the rest of the game. It's because this thing has such absurd damage ratios that if you didn't, it would become the Dueling Sword 2. Like, it's that stupid. This thing does 5 to 6 times damage on a critical headshot, and this is a class that has like a 65 minimum percentage chance to crit. And the heavy attacks on this thing have this ridiculous reach, and of course they're the literal ski poles of Darktide. So, oh shit, like, oh no, I'm like overextended in this engagement. Whatever will I do? Oh, I'll just literally fly 100 feet across the room because I'm Hive Scum and just re-engage from a different angle. Then you can throw these. So if you've got something that's being really annoying, you can throw a couple of daggers into them and cause them to expire from toxin-based stuff. Just an absolutely, like, disgusting weapon. It's hard to justify using anything else when you're playing melee Hive Scum, because simply getting a crit with these plus hyper violence and the way that scales together, like it multiplies the base damage that's added from the hyper violence, just ascends these things to the moon. These are literally one-shotting Carapace Ragers with light attacks. They'll just walk into it like it's like a paper shredder, and they're just falling over light attacks to the face. Meanwhile, you're also able to take this and deal like upwards of 30k with a heavy attack. We just do like a hyper violence rampage stab on a small enemy, and then just stab a boss in the next half second, and you just take half their health bar. Like, stuff that used to be reserved for like the Thunder Hammer can now be done with one of the fastest attacking, fastest moving weapons in the game that also gets to throw itself for some reason. Just comical, like just comical. And this is, again, going back to what I was saying, the best weapons in the game almost always will preserve the rule of just attacking super, super fast, leaving extremely small openings for you to get attacked in retaliation. The ones that stand out are the ones that can stagger enemies, the ones that can stop enemies from attacking at all, or can end the fight before it even starts, right? Yeah. So there you go. I mean, this should come as no surprise, but if you are learning to play a class, if you're interested in playing a class, I recommend this set up here. These are the ones you'll probably definitely want to start with, and then look to move down. If you get bored of stuff up here, you can move down into this tier here and play around with it more. These are the ones that are fun and interesting to play with and are just off of that main power line. Down here, I'm starting to feel like we need some serious like juice in order to make them more relevant, unless you really, really love torture in your games. Either way, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you next one, and bye-bye.